Welcome to Issued for Construction. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs. And today I've got with me a gentleman who is one of the partners, been at a practice for quite some time. Thankfully introduced to him by a beautiful man named Michael Mantea. He joined me at the launch party for my businesses. And, I would say that the practice has its hand in a lot of work all across Canada. When I asked him how many practices he thinks they work with, the answer was hundreds. And I would agree. So today I've got with me, if you haven't already read, I've got Philip Evans from ERA Architects. Phil, thanks for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And I just said
Thank
Phil.
you.
I should have said
No,
Phil.
it's I get both.
Okay, I know, but you prefer Philip,
I do prefer Philip.
right? It's the same way I prefer Jonathan,
There we go.
right? Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you taking time to do this. We're probably, if not already, we'll have spent the entire afternoon together. And it's been a pleasure. And the time that we've come to know each other, which has been very brief, it's been a lot of fun.
We're kindred spirits already, John.
Okay, so if anyone hasn't listened to this before, the basics of how I like to go about discussions with people is I like to ask them about, where they were born, what life was like for them early on, and then I kind of move through the course of their education, professional career, and go through it all. So it's not something that anyone that sits across from me ever has to study about understanding where does this conversation go, because it's pretty much the history of their life. And the cool thing for you, Philip, is that you get to, over the next however long this conversation goes, have a bookmark at a stage of your life and professional career and where you are personally and everything else that defines this moment. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
And it's all coming from you. It's not like from someone that wrote an article about it,
That's
right?
Yeah.
Or an award or anything like that. This is you. So where were you born?
Wow.
What was your family like? What did your parents do? What were your interests? All of those questions.
Yeah. And I gotta say it's a fun question to be asked. It's a fun format to explore where we've come from, taking stock on how we got to this place.
Well,
So an acknowledging and appreciation for what that is.
I appreciate that. I mean, look, for someone to work with you, you've had all of this lived experience, and it doesn't just go for you. It goes for all the people at the practice, right? So when you're going to work with someone, you want to know, like, okay, well, what have you experienced in your life? What are you drawing on? Philip spent a good part of this conversation, as you're about to hear, talking about his family's history as shipbuilders in Newfoundland, a trade passed down through generations, hand to hand, person to person. The same idea sits at the center of Kaplan's Appliances. With Kaplan's, delivery is never the finish line, because for them, it's just the beginning. This isn't a franchise. The family name is on the door. There's a reason why I want them as a partner for this podcast, because they've been around for generations. Kaplan's still believes in old school communication, putting a face to a name, and actually talking to the people they work with. They understand that business runs on real relationships, and that it's done best when someone picks up the phone and shakes your hand instead of hiding behind a call center. Kaplan's has become an establishment in the city because they never lose sight of that. If you want to learn more and connect with them, I will happily do so. You can find contact info down below in the liner notes of the show, or you can email me directly. It's Jonathan, JONATHAN, at issuedforconstruction.ca. I'll happily connect you with Janine, the head of their team that helps integrate you into the process and understand what are your needs, who are you, what does this look like, and then she'll set you up with the right person in-house. And believe me, it's a great process. With all of that said, if you're enjoying this series, if you enjoy this podcast, well, I'm going to ask you to do something. Take a minute, please. Give it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on. Follow us on Instagram. You'll get to see the work of the people that are talking. For now, let's go back to Philip.
My family's originally from the East Coast.
Okay, where?
Of Canada, a place called Newfoundland.
Oh, Great,
And
great province.
it is pretty special. I spent my many summers there after my family had moved to the mainland, so to speak.
Hold on, but you glazed over. You said Newfoundland. Where?
Yeah, so actually, my mother's side of the family is up in the Notre Bay area on the north end of Newfoundland, and my father's side was had resettled in St. John's, but originally they were up in the Greenspond area, a place called Pools Island. And if you don't know Newfoundland, there's the key sort of main metropolitan area, St. John's, obviously the capital, but then many of the communities that exist, and up until probably the 50s or 60s, most people lived out in the what are called outport communities.
Yep.
And these were communities that were settled by from the sea, and so many of them were boat access, and they had in some cases been connected to other communities or completely isolated from. Isn't that amazing?
As Phil and I are talking right now, it's spring in Canada. I mean, spring most places actually, as I say that, but that's not entirely true. I'll rephrase that. Spring.
He's not a friend of yours, is he?
Well, so there's a robin outside of where we're recording right now, and this robin tries to mate with itself because the doors of the room that we're in right now in my backyard, they have a mirror on them, and so this robin for the last 2 years flies up to the doors and tries to mate with itself.
So this is a regular occurrence.
You asked if it was a friend. I mean, he's a bird brain.
Yeah.
But he's local.
That was actually a pretty nice intimate experience.
As you're describing villages and towns and cities and home. I told you it wouldn't take long to feel
warm
right
up
at home.
It's happening. We needed your little friend there to break.
Oh, don't worry, he'll be back a whole bunch of times. Yeah,
he's our comic relief for the afternoon. Oh, that was wonderful. All
right, sorry. So
no.
So I was in Newfoundland last year in St. John's. I went mountain biking.
I mean, absolutely gorgeous
setting. Kitty Vitty.
Yeah. Oh, great spot
with like some incredible athletes, including one guy who was like a Filipino on the Filipino national team.
Okay. Did you get a chance to stop
over?
I
said the Filipino national team. I actually meant the Philippines national team.
Okay.
My God, I felt so under conditioned.
Yeah.
And but what a spot.
Well, you got lots of terrain there.
Lots of terrain.
Yeah.
And you have lots of the views. Every time you'd come over a crest, you'd have this view of the ocean, and my God, it was incredible.
I mean, all throughout the province, there's some pretty spectacular views and wonderful, landforms. And funny, I was familiar with St. John's, and I've done a number of road trips up to the north and the northern communities across Notre Bay. And as you wander up outside of St. John's, up through Conception Bay, up past Bonavista Bay, and then you get up to Notre Dame Bay. My mother's side of the family was from a little community called Northern Arm in Botwood, was the neighboring community, and they were all they had settled there in the late 1800s, and they were all shipbuilders.
Crazy.
And at some point they had and they built ships for 3-mast schooners for years and years, and for generations they would pass that down to one another. And at some point they had sort of transferred their skill set onto land, and so they were obviously building structures and sheds and boats and houses. At some point they would also contribute to civic buildings and schools and churches and what have you. So I didn't have much of a connection to that growing up on the mainland in Ontario when my parents came here.
How old were you when you came?
Oh, geez, like young. So I don't
like a 5, 6.
Yeah, like young.
Oh, younger than that.
So like my family would bounce. We bounced around in Ontario when we got here. At one point we were out in Pembroke, we were in Hamilton. We kind of bounced around to a few different Petawawa. At one point we landed in Brampton, and actually many Newfoundlanders
landed in Brampton.
Ended up settling in Newfoundland, which I hadn't known until I read one of Jane Jacobs' final books.
Okay.
What was the name of that book? It's slipping my mind now. But
That's okay.
But A Green Economy, something like this. But
Okay. And what did your dad do?
so he was in finance,
Okay.
but he had grown up on the fish yards and salting fish and working on his father's boat along with his 10 brothers and sisters.
Yep.
And was the first in his family to go to university, and then came to Ontario. My mother was a nurse. My father was in finance, and both had sort of a little setup in Brampton. And that was sort of, I guess that was sort of early 80s when that happened. So yeah, I pretty much grew up in Brampton till, throughout middle school, high school. And
you have a brother?
Yeah, I've got a twin brother, which is quite eerie and fun for friends of ours in the industry who happen to bump into us at industry events. He's in real estate.
Okay.
I have a younger brother and an older sister.
There's 4 of you. Okay.
There's 4 of us, and
Same as me.
yeah, it's nice to have a
clan.
It's the introduction of your first sort of community.
Totally.
Is your family, how you relate to each other, the roles that you play with each other, the kind of discovery of interests, and what it is to challenge each other. And
I think one of the core elements of it all is like how you communicate and how you manage situations, because you're forced into it no matter what, and survival of the fittest in a family with 4 kids.
I mean, and especially so they had my mother had 4 of us in 3 years, which is kind of intense. And as a father now, I can't imagine what that would have been like. It's kind of nuts, but
my mom did 3 in 3 years, and then I think I was the byproduct of just my parents, staying in love.
Yeah, happy accidents happen. It's wonderful.
And now here I am sitting across from you. But back to you.
4 is a great dynamic, though.
Yes,
you've got a crew with 4.
Yeah, right. The only downside to 4 is that you can't 4 of you fit in the back seat of a car. There's
not comfortably.
You're maxing out at 3, and that means that you're either leading towards a van, or if you were lucky at the time, you'd get a station wagon and you'd have the backy back.
I still to this day remember our 1978 Country Squire station wagon with paneling.
Yeah.
It was definitely a show. I can't even remember if we wore seatbelts back then.
Right. With you. Just think about this for a sec as we're describing this. You're sitting, for anyone that is I don't know, what would you be? You'd be 30 and under. I mean, 35 and under probably. You have to imagine you're driving down the 401 and you're sitting in the trunk of a station wagon facing
the rear.
Yeah, you're facing backwards, so you don't know what's in front of you, or behind you, I should say, at the front. But you also could be staring like an 18-wheeler down that's behind you, and you're potentially not wearing a seatbelt.
Totally not wearing a seatbelt. Doing one of these,
Oh, by the way,
honk his horn.
Yeah. Phil's motioning pull your horn on the big 18-wheelers.
Still to this day, a crowd pleaser on the highway.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Man, what a great time to have grown up. Anyhow.
Yeah. Pre-internet, analog.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I grew up in Brampton, and I actually went to the same. I just remembered this the same high school one of your other guests went to. Omar also went to Mayfield.
Oh yeah.
We both went to the same at the high school.
Or at the same time?
We were there at the same time. Yeah. We overlapped a little bit.
Wild.
It is pretty wild.
Shout out, Omar.
It's a small scene.
And apparently in a great school, as he described it. Very creative.
Excellent school. It was an art school.
Yeah.
And so I was there for visual arts. I could always draw, and really enjoyed drawing as a form of recording. And
what did you like to draw?
So I mean, we would do. I mean, as an art school, we had all kinds of opportunities, life drawing and painting and sculpture. So it was a real kind of rich environment
Yeah.
for exposing all of us to different means and methods. And as a kind of my introduction to what a studio environment might be like with your classmates, it was a great introduction to being a student of observation, and that's a skill that I think as architects we're consistently humbled by,
Right.
and learning from those observations. So from very early on, appreciating just what an opportunity that was. And actually, I would say it was because we had these art history classes, and it was my introduction to what we're plugging into. Where have we been? What do we need to have in our operating system? Sort of pick up on the conversation where it's at the moment, and understanding how that informs a young person, and just giving you much bigger context from maybe coming from the island into Ontario, and growing up in Brampton, this sort of world beyond and the kind of history beyond, and real humility to that education. So yeah, no, it was a really great experience. And
did you also live nearby, or were you being bussed in?
We were
like
being
everyone
bussed in
else?
from Brampton.
Okay.
And then because Mayfield's just on the north end, it was in Caledon.
Yeah.
And then obviously the city of Brampton had grown quite a bit, and is still growing, and proud to have been part of that expansion. So.
And what else? What other interest did you have outside of drawing? Were you on any of the social clubs at the school? Did you play sports?
No, not really. I think it was a modest. I'll say it was a modest and but very supportive upbringing. Our friends were all jumping into group sports and hockey and soccer. That was a bit out of our price point, for kids. And then, the families evolve. I'll leave it at that. And so it was a dynamic upbringing, and one, as we sort of stepped into, teenagers, it was quite an independent, I'll say, upbringing, and one that my mother eventually found herself into real estate. And my father, lived in another community, and so my brothers and sisters and I sort of made the best of, discovering what the community had to offer, and what experiences we enjoyed were pretty self-directed. I got into, actually influenced by my father, who also did it for quite some time, into judo, and did that competitively for a little while, and then found into wrestling again.
Hold on a second.
Yeah,
just go straight to wrestling.
Well,
judo.
Yeah. So actually, that was a fun sport, and a very accessible sport. One that actually taught some great habits and respect for others.
Yeah.
And judo sort of translates to the gentle way, as a sport. Found it to be quite respectful in terms of a sport, working with others and doing groundwork and trying different throws, and I never liked the competition side of it. And actually,
which is fair.
Yeah, and we would, my father was he was a 3rd degree black belt
in judo
at the time. Yeah, so he was one of our senseis.
Oh, really?
In the club, and every time there would be a competition, it would always come down to myself and my twin brother. And so going toe to toe was never a comfortable thing, but we enjoyed it, and then ended up transferring into wrestling.
How far did you take judo? What?
I didn't go super far with it. I probably stopped it in my early teens, and then switched over. Not very far. I got to like an orange belt.
Okay.
My younger brother went quite a bit further, and my father still does it to this day. Actually, he just got his 7th degree black belt, which is
how many degrees of black belt are there?
There's 10, and it takes a while to get to move up in the levels.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a handful of people in Canada that have that. So we're all quite proud of him for
amazing.
For that
commitment, man.
Total commitment. But I found with wrestling, it was a thing I could make my own, and
Yeah.
I could take those skills from judo and transfer them into wrestling, and that was I found that to be a comfortable way to explore a kind of community and a different group of people that I would
Yep.
normally have interacted with, and we did lots of traveling with it, and I got pretty good at it actually. And we would go to these
I like
meets.
that you said it like it was a shock, or you're surprised by it.
You just stumble into these things, or you think you stumble into. You're attracted, you're drawn to them.
Yeah.
And then we just did it for fun, and then realized, oh, okay, I'm pretty good at it, and so started going to these competitions and doing pretty well, and then
these competitions you were okay with comparatively to judo.
So I was quite independent, and so my brother and I were both in different.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, categories.
You were able to separate, and it wasn't a family thing anymore. It was.
I mean, we both did it. We both wrestled in different classes, weight classes.
Okay.
And so we can enjoy it again.
Yeah.
And so then you would do it with the school, and then you would do it with the regionals, and then you'd do it with the kind of Ontario level, and then. I ended up wrestling for Team Ontario for a number of years, and then
cool
would compete on the national level. Did pretty good there. So at a certain point, it's like there's other stuff going on in high school. You want to check out some other stuff. So and then I started focusing on my art and different techniques and participating in various ways there. I also then throughout high school, just thinking about high school experiences.
Philip spent time in this episode talking about how ERA works alongside other practices on heritage projects and how much windows matter in that work. Every opening has to match and follow suit to the heritage requirements in a building, respecting the fabric that's already there. But heritage work isn't only about preserving the front, it's also about what happens at the back of these properties, where a home opens onto a beautifully designed and cultivated backyard. That's where the doors comes in. They offer curved wall glass and corner wall glass systems that let a heritage home open into its landscape without breaking the language of the original structure. Their large-scale lift and slide doors and magnetic sliding doors create a seamless connection between inside and outside. And many of their systems now come with Bluetooth integration if you want it. So opening up a home can be as simple as a tap. The doors understands that a window and door isn't just an opening. It's the connection between a building's past and the life being lived in it today. If you want to learn more, head over to the liner notes, or you can email me and I'll personally set up an introduction between you and the team at the doors. That's both Martin and Marta, who have been running the company successfully here in Toronto, supplying windows and doors all over North America for the last 20 years. My email address is Jonathan, Jonathan, at issuedforconstruction.ca. And if you've been enjoying this podcast, I have to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Give it 5 stars wherever you're listening. Give us a follow on Instagram. It's greatly appreciated. It gets the reach out there. And again, thanks for listening. Now, let's get back to Philip.
I bought a car.
What kind of car did you buy?
I bought when I was 14 or 15. I was 15. I bought a 1970 Toyota Land Cruiser.
Oh,
it was just a giant rust bucket of
awesome.
Of a vehicle, but
manual transmission.
Oh yeah, three gear, 3 speeds, 3 gears, and
for anyone listening, sorry I'm interrupting you again.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're listening, I assume there's a good chance you understand what manual transmission is, but again, if you're sub 35, you might not know what a manual transmission is. And in a 3-speed manual transmission, what you can appreciate is that first gear is probably pretty long. So making a really heavy truck move from a standstill in first gear requires a little bit of finessing with the clutch and the gearbox.
It's a definitely a different. It's like driving a tractor for anybody who's ever been on a farm or in a farm vehicle with the 3-speed transmission and no power steering.
I was going to say, and beyond that, like you're zero. If you're looking at pickup, you want to go 0 to 100. Like you might have to wait a week, but you know what the good news is? Once you're traveling at 100, it's probably pretty steady.
It's a pretty steady vehicle.
Yeah.
It was a half-ton truck, like literally. And so I had bought that when I was 15, and I didn't know anything about cars, but figured I'd fix it up, take it apart, put it together.
Very cool.
So that took a little while, but in that process, it gave us a real vehicle for all kinds of different exchanges. So we would invite others over who knew something about cars and could teach us about a thing or two, and learning about how to redo your brake pads. It was a drum brake setup.
70s, of course.
So it was pretty informative and educational, let's say. And then instead of going out getting into trouble on a Friday night, you just hang out in the garage with a few buddies.
Yeah.
Learning about some aspect of the vehicle or fantasizing about it someday being done and on the road.
Amazing.
So that was about 2 years of effort. It's funny and ironic. We, throughout that whole, period, I remember, again, trying to learn about vehicles, trying to learn about cars, how they mechanically work, how to, restore old metal and bring it back to a state of good repair. And, being introduced to an electrical harness and how that all sets up. So, the whole process over a 2-year period was pretty awesome. We were finishing it up the summer before I left for university. And I remember it was all painted. It was all set up. Everything was running. We were so excited. And I mentioned about the seatbelts. We drove over, my brother and a couple of my buddies, we drove over to the local Home Hardware to pick up some bolts so that we could fasten in the seatbelts that we had just bought. In 1970, many of these vehicles, they weren't issued with seatbelts. And so we figured we'd upgrade. And while we were in the parking lot having a chat with a few folks, because it's a unique vehicle. We were so proud of the work we had done. And now we were going to get a chance to ride it and pick up all our buddies. And driving back from the Home Hardware, old woman ran a red light, T-boned us in the intersection. And that was it. It was completely destroyed. So what that taught me was appreciate the process for everything it can teach you. The outcome, you'll just have another journey to explore through. So that was a hard lesson to learn, and to add insult to injury, literally, I was charged with not having seatbelts in the vehicle by the officer on the scene, which was also a great lesson, and because I had to defend myself to a judge, and actually did a little bit of research and realized, hey guys, this is you don't need seatbelts. Prior to 1972, you didn't require seatbelts for these vehicles. So I was able to kind of understand the system a little, have a little bit of insight into the legal framework for this, and then make a case to the judge. And I guess she just took pity on this 16, 17-year-old who just crashed their car. But
just spent 2 years rebuilding. Yeah, did you explain all that too?
Of course I did. Yeah. It was part of the whole pitch document that I had in my little slide presentation. But it was sort of a understanding, the rules of a vehicle when it was built, when it was constructed, and appreciating the value that it had and the kind of framework that it was operating in. And they made a concession and dropped the charges from that. So
this was in this was in the mid 90s?
Yeah, this would have been 95.
Yeah.
Yeah. 95 or so. It's
right. That
was a little while ago.
What a great story. Okay. So take us to the point where, you're going through high school. You've come to understand that your craft is in your hand and also in your mind, because I think that I'm going to make the correlation for you. But when you talk about the idea of wrestling, like wrestling is strategy, largely,
for sure,
right? You have that strategy element, but then in addition to it, you also have there's a whole framework of your mind that can understand how to work under pressure and how to flip what is currently defense into offense. And that plays largely into sitting in a client meeting and having a client berate you and then flipping that into the offense. Anyhow.
It is a very useful skill as it turns out, using other people's energy, and directing it in a kind of positive, constructive way. Yeah.
So what did it look like? Did you know when you were in high school that architecture was an opportunity, or did you somehow stumble upon that through conversations? Like, how did that transpire?
So, during that period, I would say our house had lots of people coming in and out, and lots of visitors, lots of social exchange, and through introductions of various people and other artists, and I was definitely, I would say, influenced by all sorts of things that people were interested in. And actually, around that time, I took a summer job position in Montreal. I actually spent a couple of summers there, working at the library, at the university, and they had
at McGill.
At McGill, at the Blackader Lauterman library, they had a collection of archives there, and the archives had a collection of drawings and models from various architects who have donated, Canadian architects who had donated their works to there. One of the key feature architects was Moshe Safdie. Had donated much of his work to the Canadian architecture collection, and I got a chance to help out, lend a hand, mostly with cataloging some of the material that they would receive from Israel, and we would have to roll the drawings out and catalog them and help out with the collections. That was a pretty cool opportunity to just sort of see this is what's happening in architecture right now, or had been an active conversation in architecture, and you could see that play out in Montreal. And so at the same time I'm working on Moshe Safdie's archives, rolling out his drawings, I'm witnessing and seeing Moshe Safdie's Expo 67, Habitat 67, across the river. And so that was a really fun thing to witness about something going from a concept state to a built form state, and then in kind of an engagement, then see that in use and how that builds out the city. So I would say, looking back on it, obviously quite influenced by that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got into grade 11 and grade 12, so we used to have 13 grades at one point here in Ontario, but I knew I wanted to go into architecture, and my family had moved quite a bit. My mother, as I mentioned, was in real estate, so she would buy something, fix it up. She had 3 boys. We would all get to work. She'd sell it, and so we would do this, repeat and rinse over and over again.
How many times were you involved?
I don't know. I actually, it's funny. The house I live in right now, I have never spent more than 5 or 6 years in a single spot, until I lived in the house that I'm in now with my family. So it was an interesting, active, dynamic moment. So I think coming out of high school, I was pretty sure I wanted to explore that because I could draw, and I was kind of appreciating where I was within a kind of larger cultural, or I was being finally introduced to a larger cultural art scene, and seeing how that could play out as a kind of practice, as a kind of, you draw something, you build it. Wow, that seems pretty cool. To this day, I still can't get over that concept. When you see something that you had drawn or had conceived of, or had been working in your studio for years and years, to see it built finally, I'll never get over that feeling.
And if this is the case with anyone listening, I apologize, but I don't know that I've ever spoken to anyone in this format that has had that as their analysis of the career as a profession,
Hmm.
where there's still the wonder and amazement over the fact that it's built. It's because to me, that's one of the things that I loved seeing when I was working on the construction side of things was, the client comes and meets with you, and then you build a team, and then there's the concepts and everything, and then you start your construction process, and then within time, there it is, and you can take what was an abstract thought, and now you're living and breathing in the space.
But isn't it cool though when you stop and think about what a privilege that is, and then to see and then measure, how did that work out? What did we learn from that? What techniques did we develop? It's a thing I think is really important in our practice to take stock on those lessons learned, and how do you redeploy or do it better or try it in a little different way. And funny enough, there's an amusement to that I found, especially having a chance to look at and review many of Moshe Safdie's archival work from his office. So he started with Habitat 67, and many people may not know this, but it was kind of a hit. It was like a big went straight to the top of the Billboard charts, and like that was his thing. That was his thesis project, and it went straight to gold, straight to platinum. And then, but he chased that idea for years, and in a way that was like, well, let's try it in this context. Let's try it on this terrain. Let's try it with these different shapes. Let's, could there be more enclosures? Could there be an entire city of it? Is this a prototype for something, even more? How can it be deployed? Some of them were, versions of it were absolutely fantastic and inspiring. Some of them were kind of comical, I found. But I remember thinking, wow, this guy's really working through and trying to understand this idea further. And I think architects get this wonderful privilege, and anyone in the building industry, whether you're a developer, whether you're a planner, whether you're a builder, whether you're the person doing the baseboards or installing the windows, the craft that we all have, and we all sort of are humbled by how many folks it takes to pull something like this off. So
did the laborer that's sweeping plays a massive role, because when that place is clean, now everybody else has a standard of how they're going to work. The entire machine that is this industry is so interesting. And I think that, to be honest, a lot of people don't stop to take stock of certain things. They might think about it, when they're doing their photo shoots of a completed piece of work. But even then, that's still, I want to capture this. Is it like stopping? And so I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a thought on this. But one of the greatest moments I can think of in my life was someone told me that when my wife Wendy and I were getting married, that an important thing to do at our wedding was to be together the whole night, so that you have the same shared experience and that you didn't separate from each other. And that at one stage during the evening, before people go and leave, you stop and you go to a corner, and the two of you just admire the fact that everyone's there. You stop and take stock of the night. And on big nights, I've always tried to do that when I go to something. And so at our wedding, I remember standing in the corner and taking stock of the night, and how amazing that was that we could share that together, because the night goes like this. And the same thing happens, even though projects take years to eventually come to the point where they're complete. It does feel like it goes, there's periods where it feels slow, but then when it's done, it feels like it was a blink of an eye.
I mean, again, I probably don't take stock and appreciate. There's taking stock, and there's learning from the lessons or the mistakes or what had worked. But that act of appreciation, that can be really hard to do, especially for people in the building industry. I would say there are a few projects I still walk into to this day. And I kind of do one of these. I put a blinder on. I can't. I remember that detail. That detail gave me a lot of
stress.
But that's kind of life. It's messy. It can be messy like that, and it's a process. And
Yeah.
and I again, just going back to, there's all kinds of moments in this industry to place value.
Yeah.
And it's fun to look at the pictures in the magazines and pick up the awards and reference the projects for future opportunities. It's also a lot of fun to just savor the moments that you're having and just take a moment to appreciate how fun is it to document this or discover in your research some incredible story, or look at how the community is valuing this moment in their neighborhood. Someone exploring a new innovative approach to a conservation technique or building technique those are incredible moments. That's what builds our practice out together. Sure. And if we're not taking that moment to appreciate it, we're not doing it justice what it is to build a practice, because that's how many of us learn. That's how many of us apprentice. And again, I guess it's no surprise. This is an apprentice practice that we have to remind ourselves of.
Yes.
It takes years to learn this stuff. And maybe you'll get good at it at some point. So,
and if you do, hopefully you take stock of that.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into school. So what did you worked at the library and understanding Safdie and what he's done? So how did you determine where you want to apply, and what did it look like? Did you need a portfolio?
And at the time, I would say Waterloo was like number one because of their co-op program, and I really wanted to go there. I really wanted to get into McGill. I ended up going to U of T.
Okay.
Which in hindsight I really did benefit from, and not just for being a kind of major city with the much of our industry that in the mid 90s was kind of hanging on. It was kind of clinging post early 90s recession.
Yeah.
But also the my class at the time, the people that I met in studio were some of the most incredible, wonderful people I've ever met, who I actually highly value those relationships to this day. They're the cohort that I'm still doing business with on a daily basis.
And who are some of those people? Instead of curiosity, like who are, I would say, like some of the people that you're closest with still.
So in that class was and I'm gonna kick myself for leaving out all the names, but like there was a roster.
Hold on. But just let's preface this. If you're not mentioned here, please don't be offended. Like this is an on the spot situation. You go back and look at your thank yous when you win an Oscar, and it's never going to.
Well, now I don't want to name anybody else, but no, but it was
okay,
it was
enough.
like
leave it.
Yeah.
But
safe. It was an incredible cohort of individuals who are, I would say, to this day, innovating and actively practicing and setting new conversations up. And I would say out of that moment, the late 90s, coming into the early 2000s, there was I think a special moment for anyone graduating in that sort of late 90s to late 2000s. We all graduated into one of the biggest building booms in this country's history.
Yeah.
It's been incredible. And I mean, some might argue the building boom started, as far back as the sort of post-war era. And I would agree with that. I mean, Canada made huge investments in infrastructure and community building at that post-war moment. But I would say we've all been quite lucky in our timing to experience that, entering into a workforce when a generation prior to that
you wouldn't have found a job.
You wouldn't. I mean, all the architects who graduated in the sort of mid 90s, they just went into other fields. They went into other
because of the recession.
Yeah. So there were just simply no jobs. So when we entered the workforce, there was a missing cohort.
So worth noting in this discussion, this period of time, is that in the year, I think it was 2004, 2005, in that time frame, Dubai had the most cranes per capita in the world. I know this because I did a short thesis on this. And second to Dubai globally was Toronto.
At that time. Incredible.
Yeah. Like we had more cranes than any other city than Dubai.
I mean, that's impressive. I'd heard that stat of like we'd had more cranes in Toronto than any other city
in North America.
Yeah. And or the next three combined in North America. I hadn't heard that about Dubai. Yeah, it's been impressive.
So and in addition to that, you're right in between the 91 recession and the 2008 recession. So you have like a massive influx of opportunity to be able to go and design and jobs and all the rest of it. So what I did want to ask you was, when you were in school, just before we get to the end of school, but when you were in school, were there any professors that you had that really set your mind on fire with what was possible, or gave you some creative tools that you have found have stuck with you in a way that have shaped who you are as a professional?
Absolutely. I mean, those professors are now your colleagues, you know, when you get out into the industry. So you have you realize just how important their contribution was to your career and how important it is to extend that to the next tier coming up. But I would say a few come to mind right away. I would say John Schneer's right at the top of my list. An incredibly creative, thoughtful individual who is just, full of so many incredible references and thoughtful, great guy.
Okay.
I would say, and just an excellent designer. I would say Kim Story and James Brown in their practice. While I was finishing up in university, they were working on the Yonge and Dundas Square at the time, and I think in Toronto, for those of you who weren't around when that design was unveiled, when that project was announced, and Kim and James had won the project, and the entire architectural design community was beyond ecstatic and excited for a new public realm, the creation of an extension and expansion of our public space. Was a really exciting moment for all of us. So it was a real celebratory
awesome
moment, and I actually, Kim was my thesis advisor, and that was just a wonderful experience to have her insight into the work that I was exploring. And it's funny what you try and you explore during school. I think at the time I was interested in the conditioning of architecture. Like, okay, well, what happens after you build it? Like, how do these things get used? How do they last? Do they get modified? Is this part of a lineage of things?
Are we future-proofing this?
And I wasn't thinking, I had never heard of adaptive reuse prior to that. I hadn't articulated. I was trying to understand what are the conditions that set up really exciting moments like Yonge and Dundas Square, or the change that we were seeing on our waterfront at the time, or the emergence of...
Philip just touched on how Toronto's waterfront was changing during that era, part of a city rethinking what its outdoor spaces could be. The same idea shows up on a much more personal scale in backyards across the city, and that's where Quanta Pools comes in. They help homeowners turn an ordinary backyard into the kind of space people actually want to spend their evenings in. The same instinct that reshaped Toronto's waterfront on a much bigger scale. Quanta approaches every project with the same attention to detail this show spends so much time talking about in architecture, treating a pool and its surroundings as a real piece of design, not an afterthought. That is why Yuri has been successful at running Quanta Pools and other pool businesses back in the Ukraine for over 20 years. If you want to learn more and connect with them, head over to the liner notes, or you can email me and I'll introduce you to Yuri, the owner of the company. He'll tell you all about biodesign and his passion for the business and why having a pool installed by them is going to change your life, because it does. My email address is Jonathan, JONATHAN, at issuedforconstruction.ca. And if you don't mind, 5 stars wherever you're listening, follow us on Instagram, and I thank you for it. Now, back to Philip.
I knew what we saw as a condominium. I remember Leo DeSorsi walking into our first year introduction to city and municipal approvals, and he came in the first day of class quite excited about a new building type form that has emerged in Toronto, and it was called the condominium. And he put an image up on the screen, and it was a concept design for district lofts, designed by Peter Clues, and walked us through what this was and how dynamic that design is, and what this meant for Toronto as a place that was starting to grow. He was you could feel his enthusiasm and excitement for that. So definitely U of T being so connected to the industry at the time, and a kind of moment of relief and optimism for the architecture design community. That was the beginning of what was to become a pretty expansive, exploratory 25-year period, to be honest, in my career, and which is pretty cool. Again, I feel quite lucky to have been coming up through that and gaining the experience that I have, and sharing that with others. So and university's fun, like to be in the city. Again, as a former Brampton boy, hey, what's going on here? This is a whole lot of fun.
But also, you're coming up at a time. I mean, I was just funny. I was on a previous episode to now, from when this is released, there's an episode with the design agency, and we were chatting all about like the scene of Toronto back when it was like bars and clubs. And another statistic for you, that Toronto had I'm trying to remember what this exact stat was, but I think we had, and people will second guess me on this, but I'm almost positive we had more bars and clubs per capita in the downtown core than there were in New York.
Is that right? I did not know that. That seems hard to imagine.
I know. But
actually, as I try and teleport my brain back to that.
You think of the strip of like Richmond and Adelaide and what that was like in the late 90s and early 2000s, and every single door was a bar or a club.
It was fun. I remember having fun. Maybe too much fun,
right?
Now that I think about it, but actually it was. And where have they all?
They're condos now.
And actually appreciating maybe what that was as a result of an early form of renewed interest in the city, and the kind of what we would say today as a kind of meanwhile use. Just making, like, engaging all this extra square footage, like former warehouses, former offices, and people returning to the cities from the sort of out migration out of the decade before. So
it's a great time.
It was a pretty incredible time. I never lived downtown. After I think my first year in residence, I would bounce around a little bit, get a little spot up in the annex, get a little spot over on the west side, and then I ended up spending some time out in Parkdale, and actually that was where the affordable rent was at the time, in these little warehouses. I was in a place on Atlantic Avenue, and so I would say, and it sometimes feel shy about admitting this, I did my 5-year degree in architecture in 8. It turns out university is kind of expensive, right? And so I had to get a little bit creative.
Who cares how you had to do it, man?
But it's just more to say, in addition to the fun that I was having in studios and out in the scene, I actually found myself quite distracted and enamored by other communities that I was being introduced to at that time, and I remember paying how to pay rent, and all I would need to do is throw one giant rave party, and that would cover, 2 months worth of rent. And so, after the first one, you realize, oh, this is easy. This is awesome. And so we would, a group of us that lived together, we would throw these massive $25 at the door. We would all work the bar. We would have DJs. We just have these, incredible events. You'd have like some special guests with Darth Vader and a few stormtroopers show up, and everybody's having all kinds of fun. So actually that was that was one of those creative ways to figure out how to finance my way through the back half of university. And actually I will say that
Entrepreneurial.
a little, well, again, I was just having fun.
I get it.
But when I started at a certain point, that became a lot to sort of manage. And I remember as I was nearing the end of that process, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to get a real job at some point. And I was
as a promoter.
Well, I'll be honest. I actually took a year off to do a few art shows. I was exploring interests in film. I was exploring different various opportunities, taking a side gig here and there as you try and sort of pay your way, figure things out.
Yeah.
And then my last year, so I had done all my credits for the most part, and then I just had one more year of studio left, or maybe I did it vice versa. Anyways, my last year of school, I had to be working full time. Like that was it. And I applied to a few positions. One position I applied to was this sort of scrappy studio. It was a small firm, 7 or 8 people, and they worked on little old heritage buildings. And a friend of mine, Tom Folan, had introduced me to one of the founders there, Michael McClellan. And
what was the studio called?
The studio was called ERA Architects.
Oh, interesting.
And it was a great introduction. And I really, Tom had actually been teaching at OCAD, and I had met him through mutual friends. And when I went for the interview, I remember we just had a conversation. There weren't any, big works that they had been known for. They spoke about process. They spoke about, craft. They spoke about how the city was evolving. And I thought, oh, this is kind of my vibe. This is kind of the stuff I'm into. These are urbanists.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I am. I'm an urbanist. And they're having the discussion around existing buildings and these quote unquote heritage buildings. And I could see that was a sort of vehicle for having some pretty rich conversations about value and then what to do with value. And that made quite an impression on me. And so I got a job there. Now, I didn't tell them at the time that I was still in school. To their minds, they thought I had graduated. Yeah. So I lied to them for quite some time until it was kind of hard to deny. So I was finishing up school this
Sorry, guys, can't come to that meeting.
Yeah,
I have class.
Well, I would always prioritize the studio work, and then when I had a class that I couldn't, I had to make up something up, or I got an appointment, and it was my actions were pretty obvious. They sat me between the two principals at the time, Michael McClellan and Edwin Rouse. They sat sort of facing each other with a little partition in between. And then off to the side, visible to both of them, was a little table, and they set me up with this little computer. So it was very difficult for me to sneak around and keep this a secret. And it was probably 3 or 4 months in that Michael had said, "Hey, are you like in school right now? Like, are you wrapping up?" Like, yes, actually I am. So they were so great about it and so supportive. And
so you're part of the original 10.
Yeah. I think, and that was oh gosh, that was 2001. And I had, up until that point, like I said, I was exploring the city. I worked for I got hooked up with a grant-funded research assignment called "The Culture of Cities," and it was run through a SSHRC grant out of York. and I was doing these studies about neighborhoods and communities, and I'd been exploring, Kensington area. So I had like the beginnings of cobbling together a knowledge of moves in the city and growth patterns,
Mhm.
and I became very excited about that. So that was, I think, part of the entry point into ERA. There was some compatibility there. I had no skills. I didn't really know AutoCAD at the time. I had some graphic curatorial
You knew how to
qualities.
draw.
I knew how to draw by hand.
Yeah, and
I
if
was excellent drawing by
and
hand.
if anybody wanted to potentially lose at wrestling, they could have that happen.
I could take them down, but at that moment we were still transitioning from hand drawn to AutoCAD, and AutoCAD was there. It was folks were using it.
Yeah.
And I figured it out. I figured out enough that I could. And UFT wasn't an education that was necessarily doubling down on its high tech computer skills at the time. It was something they dabbled in and introduced us to, but it was never something I was incredibly drawn towards. I was one of those, artsy guys having fun doing that stuff. So yeah, I would say the sort of transition into the workforce came through an interest in the city, and was enough to kind of keep my interest in architecture as a medium. And I remember one of the first projects I ever worked on there wasn't a design project in any way. It was a cataloging exercise of all the cultural institutions across the city. So it was a mapping assignment, so to speak, of and it was a guy by the name of Jeff Evanson, and I forget Anne's last name. It'll come to me, with ERA, mapping out, taking stock of all the city-owned cultural institutions, assets, and artifacts and sculptures throughout the city. And so that was a lot of fun. But it was an Excel documentation of sorts, and then going out into the field and trying to find, are these is this a studio space? Is this a theater space?
Right.
What, and start to classify and understand these.
Creating
these
the Rolodex of
and then being able to what's working, what's not working, and classifying them into types.
Yep.
And working with the city of Toronto to understand what's working in the system, what's fostering, incubator type startups for artists, and what are kind of more established, assets and theaters that are attracted to a different level and quality of so like really cataloging an aspect of culture in the city. I thought that was the coolest. I just thought that was what could you do with this information? What could you sort of plan forward and make recommendations and strategic management of those assets? I thought that was like a fascinating exercise to be involved with. Again, no drawing, but thinking and problem solving and understanding what's missing,
but also,
and what could work better.
Developing a knowledge base and like of when you talk about urbanists, like that is the definition of urbanist. Like you become the source of knowledge for what's happening in the city and what's not happening in the city, but where it is. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it was cool that we were thinking about this
analog Google Earth.
Yeah, it was. But that people were thinking about this.
Yeah.
Like, this hadn't been, like, I thought architecture was about buildings and like, details. And yes, it is. But it was also, a contributor to some bigger conversations.
Right.
In how the city's being managed and understood. So
you started there 2001, you complete your degree over the next 15 years. And
yeah. No, it's the 5 and 8 model. Give it a shot. It's a whole lot of fun. But out of the early I would say between 2001 and 2005, I got a chance to work on a whole range of projects, and what I thought was the coolest was, again in the late 90s, it was hard to get a job working in architecture, like especially as a student. So like I found it hard to get a job answering phones at a front desk in an architecture firm. There were many offices that I got yelled out of for, trying to force my way in and put my CV in front of somebody. I'll leave those names out. You know who you are. But it was a time to really appreciate, while in that early 2000 period of ERA, just what's going on in the design scene
Right.
in Toronto. And at the time, we got a chance to work with, many different, because we were consultants. We were
This is what actually was going to ask you next. Go ahead. Finish.
no, just
You were consultants?
as consultants, getting a chance to contribute to a project, fulfill a very specific role on a much larger project, having a window into these other practices that I had, only known about. I hadn't worked in, and it gave you just an incredible view of design practice and what was being pursued, what were the common questions, what were the differences from how certain practices work. It was really fun.
So let's talk about that, because I think that if you're listening to this and you're not local to Toronto or Canada, this next part is what is probably very interesting about the structure of the practice, and that is how the practice operates and what function it serves, because you describe it as a consultant practice. So why don't you go and describe, how does ERA fulfill the service that it provides to the community at large?
I mean, I would say at that time it was still somewhat early days,
Yeah.
right? In terms of a
That's
mission, in terms of a business model. I mean, just prior to that, Michael and Edwin had been running the practice for 10 years out of their basements, right?
Okay.
And then they took over a space on 10 St. Mary, space that actually Peter Clues had been in for some time, and it was a big leap for them to be running,
Take on space,
take on
financial
staff.
risk.
We had 8 or 9 staff between the period of 2001 to 2005. It was a period that we were just participators in and supporters of the design communities. We were assisting architects, and I would say mainly our clients at that time were architects. We had very few clients that were, end user or like development, like direct with developer clients. I would say 80 to 90% of our clientele were other architects,
Mm-hmm.
and we were subs to them as heritage consultants.
And how did they find you?
I mean, at that point, it was relationships. It
Okay.
was Edwin and Michael had actually both worked at Quadrangle Architects, and had left Quadrangle to start their own thing, working on heritage buildings. Michael had actually worked at the City of Toronto in their heritage department years prior.
Okay.
He had also worked in Vancouver as well, and Edwin, who had found his way to Toronto, had worked at Quadrangle for a few years, and so the two of them met up there, got along like a house on fire, and then started their practice. So it was still, I think, a period in which they had many relationships with other architects in the community and
Mm-hmm.
folks that they had come across. So it was very much, again, a supportive role. If there was ever a portion of a building that needed some conservation work, some bricks and mortar work, Michael and Edwin would help out. That was easy work for architects to sub out, and it was really specialized work, and a specialty that both Edwin had enjoyed in the kind of bricks and mortar side of things, and Michael had known how to navigate the approval side of
Right.
it.
Interesting.
In the city of Toronto and the municipality. So it was a great combo between them both, and they had great success doing that. I think that was around the same period. They had been working with Cityscape at the Distillery District,
Mm-hmm.
and which was a huge amount of fun. I think there was some complicated approvals to sort of sort through following a kind of master plan exercise, and there was some untangling that Micah was really quite clever at assisting, and Edwin, in his knowledge of bricks and mortar, was able to give very clear, concise advice and guidance to both to the owners and to other architects that would find themselves working and outfitting spaces at the distillery. So it was more along the lines of the kind of UK model, like, surveyors of the fabric, where they were responsible for, the holdings, the development holdings for that site. So that was a big, important project for us. And as that site evolved, beyond its sort of initial phases of developing some early condo units designed by and on behalf of Options for Homes, I believe, they had turned their minds to the fabric of the old distillery portion, and that transformation to see across that period from 2001 to 2005 was a pretty wild experience for all of us.
Yeah.
And so,
and did you ramp up in terms of team?
There was still at that time. So at that time, the kind of the core sort of principles today were there. It was Michael and Edwin with they had brought in Andrew Press. At that time, Scott Weir was there, and then shortly after Graham Stewart. So the 5-6 of us were all there within 6 months of each other.
Crazy.
We kind of popped up into the scene, and all kind of really different individuals, all with a kind of spirit of, well, let's give that a shot. Let's try this out. And there was never permission to seek. It was this sort of feeling of, you think you can take it on? We'll go for it. We'll figure out how to support each other doing that. So it was a very supportive, and we were all experimenting and having a lot of fun doing it.
Sounds like an incubator and accelerator.
It was. I mean, some of us had more experience than others. I would argue, obviously, Michael and Edwin and Andrew Press had quite a bit of experience designing other pieces of architecture before he showed up at ERA. Myself and Graham, we were new to this. We were recent grads. I think Graham was like me. He was just wrapping up his undergrad.
Okay.
And Scott had moved to Toronto from Ottawa. Shortly after moving to Toronto, did he only start working at ERA. So it was sort of these early days, and it was exciting. And we all looked for opportunities in various different ways. And we all had these satellite communities we were all sort of connected to. I had, again, in my escapades outside of architecture, ran into a few interesting people. I had met a friend of mine was doing these sort of recordings of moments in the city, and you'd go to a payphone. There used to be these payphones, for those listeners who've never seen payphone. You go to a payphone, there was a little sign, and it was the initiative was called Murmur, if you ever remember it. And you'd pick up the phone, you'd dial the number, and it would give you a little story about someone's anecdotal experience in the city. Sean is now a writer for the Star, and
I never knew about this.
Yeah, it was him and Sean and Gabe.
Okay.
Had started and initiated Murmur, and then they were close friends with this other guy, Matt Blackader, who ended up starting and launching Spacing Magazine. So I was in around that time, and again, because I came out of a bit of a party scene, I'd met Sean, I'd met Matt.
So you came out of a party scene, or you created the party scene?
I was again, the 5 and 8 model includes some creative fundraising. So in those initiatives, and again, there was compatibility. They were writers. They were creative thinkers. They were graphic folks. But we all shared a love of the city, and we were all really excited about what was going on in the city. And we figured we could all support each other. So out of that, I introduced the guys to Michael and ERA, and we figured out we should celebrate the city. We should speak about Toronto, this Toronto, the good, and quickly came up with the party, Toronto the Good, which we had run for many years But initially it was about doing some fundraising for Spacing magazine. Like, it's really hard to pull off a printed magazine.
Yep.
It's obviously even harder today, but back then, as a startup, it was an important, publication, and it was one that was talking about things we all believed in. And we were, as urbanists, we were looking for a forum. We were looking for a platform to promote and celebrate the city, and a whole host of writers and contributors were involved, and that was really exciting. So that was the early days of Toronto the Good as an initiative. And then Scott was had a bunch of friends in the event industry as well, and quickly found himself restoring the 7th floor of College Park, the Carlou, and we all got real excited about that, and none of us had ever done work like that before, but we knew about it. We were interested in it. We were exploring, experimenting with it together, and it was just complicated enough that nobody else wanted to do it. So we figured let's take that on, and we would all share opportunities within these bigger opportunities that each of us had. So it was a really, again, collaborative in the studio, and then collaborative in the individual relationships that we had outside into these other firms. So again, I wouldn't argue it was a business plan at that point. We were just all having fun. We were just in a kind of discovery period.
Not uncommon from everything that I've heard from people for the last 2+ years.
Yeah. It's amazing how that you just follow your passion and follow your interest, and you hope that there's alignment and need for it in the industry. So and then I would say eventually I found myself doing adaptive reuse and architecture, right?
And we started having to actually buckle down,
and then we had to do some work. So but there were, again, so many incredible happy accidents along the way where another architect would have run into trouble. We were able to sort of come in and play support to them, or somebody had a project that was just too complicated. I remember one of my earlier projects, one of the first projects I'd actually kind of been part of as prime, was the conversion of an old church out on the West End on Sunnyside, and it was as a conversion, as an adaptive reuse, probably one of the most complicated to this day projects to sort of pull off, but was just an absolute fun learning experience. Building a steel structure within a stone box without having to make big openings on the side. It's like those little glass jars with the little ships inside. It was something else. So many lessons, many happy accidents, and wonderful relationships that had evolved from that period.
Yeah,
I had I actually left ERA
really
in 2005. Yeah, and actually I went over to the UK, and I was there about a year and a half or so, and had a chance to work in a design studio over there. That was a whole experience. It's funny. You think you understand what you're doing in this practice. Go do it in another country, and that's pretty humbling. I would say
nobody could see the facial expression that came with that.
Yeah, it was very expressive, very expressive. But look, we all speak English, but the framework and the approval process and the sensitivities and the culture there were unlike anything I had understood before. But I had a chance to continue my learning and continue working on buildings, mostly on funny, at that time, 2005. I don't know if you remember Jamie Oliver, the chef. He did quite a critique about schools, the state of schools and food and nutrition in schools at the time. So off the heels of that, the county that I had lived in, the county of Kent, was feeling quite compelled to do some updating to outdated infrastructure and many buildings that they had built and thrown up in the the post-war and in through to the 60s. Many of these buildings, they were, not the best building envelope constructions, and sort of still learning about where dew points were and all that fun stuff. So, some of these buildings just had to be, taken down. Some were candidates for retrofit. Some were opportunities for development. And I found myself just by chance in the position of having a little bit of experience with development coming out of the city of Toronto. So, they hadn't, in the kind of small town community of Hythe and Canterbury and Folkestone and these smaller communities, they just didn't have any experience with what approvals would look like that changed what existing zoning, and that's what Toronto's all about.
Right.
This is a transactional city. We decided we weren't going to change our zoning laws. We were going to do it on a case-by-case basis. So lo and behold, I hadn't realized I had all this experience. I just didn't realize it was like the wax on, wax off stuff, paint the fence, right? You just, oh my gosh, you can apply it in so many different ways.
So curious to know who doesn't get that reference. If you don't get that reference, can you please send me an email? I will happily explain it to you. I don't want to do it now, but if you don't, Jonathan, Jonathan at Issued for Construction. I will explain it to you. Sorry, go ahead.
I will give one clue, Daniel's son.
Oh, no.
That gives it away, maybe, perhaps, but I'll leave it at that. So I found myself negotiating opportunities with the county on the county level through the school boards.
Interesting.
Through like a studio that was maybe 30 people or so. It was a firm called CTM Architects. It at the time had been taken over by a gentleman by the name of Guy Holloway, who was an excellent designer, excellent architect. And I found myself in the unique sort of position of knowing a little bit about this stuff. And what we would find is that some of these schools, especially the ones that needed retrofit and some fixing up, it was costly. It was costly to do those repairs. It was
right.
It was somewhat straightforward to replace a building.
Yeah.
But for those buildings that had either some life left in them, or they weren't fully, or they had historic value, I knew what to do with them, and I had a sense, and I was able to negotiate portions of sites that they could sell off and develop to private sector developers to pay for the repairs and the investments to new facilities for these schools and the communities. So
incredible. I
found myself in the period of like 6 months just generating
opportunities,
just tons of opportunities. And it was fantastic.
And then you're like, okay, bye.
And so I was there for maybe a year or so. And I think it came quite sudden. And whether I had intended to stay there as long as I did or longer, it was time for us to move back. And
us? Who's us?
My wife and I.
At the time, were you married?
Yes, I had. Yeah, we were married at the time. I should know that. We were married in 2005.
So you just had been
married.
We had
just been married. Actually, there's a whole story to that, which we won't go into. But I was there as her dependent as she was doing her PhD in film.
Oh, amazing.
Which is why I have all these film references. And for those who I do work with, I probably
I'm all for it.
Distract people way more than I probably should.
That's my whole rooting.
It's part of our culture, connects with film and television, as it turns out. So then we ended up coming back to Toronto. And again, really valuing the experience in the UK and having a chance to just do new design work and what that looked like, and be sort of curating what the aims and the goals of the project were, and then trying to unlock the financing for those projects, and here's a pro forma. Okay, let's try that out. So it was a real eye opener to me, and just a kind of this comes natural, and I was quite interested in the working at that level, working at that scale. And so coming back to Toronto, the sort of choice: do I go back to ERA, or do I try? I've got all these relationships, I've got all these connections into these other studios and these other offices, and I did ponder and consider, do I hook up with one of these other firms, these other outfits? Do I start my own sort of practice? And I just kept feeling the draw back to ERA, and I will say it was the people, definitely the people.
Right.
It was definitely the undefined model that was ERA. It still felt like a place that I could continue to experiment, continue to explore.
Right.
The culture of things that I was interested in and contribute to a community. So that those kind of came together in a decision to sort of return to ERA. But what I had discovered in being part of a firm that was larger than the 8 to 12 people was, guys, we can extend our reach if we just kind of ramp up in size. This 30-person scale it's kind of fascinating what you can draw on and reach. So I came back with the understanding in 2006 or 7 that we would grow.
Yeah.
We would explore similar scale projects, and it wasn't something I would have been intimidated before, but having these other experiences firsthand, I felt like, okay, we could take that on.
And what was your role when you came back? Like, I assume before you left, what was your position before you
just
junior
just
architect?
person? Just we didn't have titles.
Oh, really?
At the office for the longest time, and in part it was just maybe our self-image in the industry as heritage consultants,
right,
as architects. Did we count as architects? Could we really say we were part of the planning process? Could we really? So we were kind of straddling a bunch of different worlds
right,
at the time.
Right.
So I think we left. We felt comfortable, ambiguous about title.
Fair enough.
And that worked well for us for some time. So I just came back. I don't think in any position. No, that's not true, actually. I did come back and get the title of associate at the time. Yes. Okay. And building a kind of body of work around, the growing on the practice. What had changed since I had left was some policy framework in the province. So for those of you who don't know, in 2005, we have the Places to Grow and the provincial policy statement that were updated. And this was really about targeting a vision for Ontario, and that we would grow where we have areas of transit, and so transit-oriented communities. And that was really on a high level, an important driver to and a focus to our growth. It also said, here's a line in the Places to Grow. You can't go outside of it, right? And so it sort of gave it provided some pressure and some momentum about anybody inside the line, any sites inside the line being targeted for and incentivized for growth. Cool. At the same time that rolled out, we had an update to the Ontario Heritage Act, which gave it some heritage in the city of Toronto and in the province of Ontario, some real teeth in terms of legislation. And I'll be honest, it's taken us since 2005 to understand how strong that policy document is and what it can do and how it can be leveraged. So those two pieces of legislation were pretty, I would say, important to the call to action that ERA had been in a position to answer. So what we saw was a lot more listings and designations and a lot more participation through various departments at City Hall, and the kind of maturing of conservation as a practice in the city of Toronto, anyways. And I try and remind people it's not that old of a practice in Canada, anyways. Like our heritage movement and conservation movement, it really, we have the modernists to thank for it out of the 60s when Mises Tower first knocked over a John Lyle bank building at the corner there of Bay and King. Toronto had never seen activism like that before. And, in response to projects like that and other modernist buildings, the sort of conservation heritage movement protection had emerged.
Right.
So moving beyond just a sort of protectionism phase, the Ontario Heritage Act out of 2005 became a tool that we were all using to explore, well, what does this mean to manage, buildings that have protection,
Right.
and how might that evolve and be relevant in the city as we continue to, take on new immigrants into the city as our city grows.
Right.
I mean, from that period, if you remember this, like I remember living on the West End in our little Parkdale loft there on the 3rd floor at 77 Florence, looking out over the city skyline, hanging out with a few folks on rooftops. Brendan Canning, Leslie was there just before we had left to go to the UK. And
Did you just reference Brendan Canning?
Yeah. And there was a whole...
So those of you that are unfamiliar with who Brendan Canning is, he's one of the founders of Broken Social Scene. Is that you referring to?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And actually...
Broken Social Scene is, I think, one of the greatest bands in Canada.
They're the best.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, them. There was a whole scene of folks there.
I started to digress too much, but Brandon just co-founded a new band with my cousin.
I did not know that.
Cynthia Toro.
Okay.
And they just started a band called Toro. And they just had a whole launch party and everything. So Brandon's now playing in a band alongside my cousin. Yeah.
It's such a small world,
dude,
actually.
It's wild. I have to say this. So is it Masonic Temple? No, not Masonic Temple. Sorry. I know that I totally digress.
Please. I want you to remember.
I have to remember this. Yeah. What is the name of the venue in Leslieville?
In Leslieville, the Opera House?
No. Oh my God. Yeah, I know.
On Queen?
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're saying it out loud right now, and I'm sorry that I can't hear you. But Phil and I are in a room, and we can't hear you because you're listening to this in the future.
Is it history?
History.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was at History last year, and to see Broken Social Scene, so excited. I haven't seen them in years, and there for the opener, and this woman comes on stage, and I know that again, I'm sorry, I apologize for anyone listening to this right now, and this is not really an architecture story, but I'm sorry. It's just my wife and I are watching this, and the woman on stage playing the piano, Brandon's up there and everyone else is up there, and I'm like, oh, she sounds really good. And then she's like, yeah, so for those of you that don't know, our name is Toro. And I was like, Toro? And she's like, yeah, and today's my mom's birthday, Michelle's up there, and she points, and I'm like, I look at my wife, I'm like, hold on a second. Is that my cousin Cynthia? Is she referencing Michelle? Like Michelle, like my cousin? And I look, and Michelle's waving back at her, and I'm like, oh my God. And I get on my phone and I text with Michelle. And Michelle's like, you're here? I'm like, look down. As this is happening on stage. I'm like, look down. She looks down, like, happy birthday. Cynthia comes over, and then anyhow, so yeah, she's in a band with Brandon Canning. It's we're small.
I mean, to watch their career. I mean, I will say Toronto at that time, early 2000s, was producing such incredible music. That music scene. I was only peripherally, an observer to it. Across the hall from us on 77 Florence on the 3rd floor was Stephen and Andrea. Stephen was the individual who had done all the filming for Brendan, the Broken Social Scenes
the
documentary.
Yeah, the movie that just came out on Crave.
Yeah. So he'd been following. He's got 20 years of film.
I know. I watched them. I watched the doc.
Absolutely incredible. What an amazing commitment. So it was just a great scene to be part of. And actually, my wife at the time had worked at the Rivoli, and so that's where they were all working and hanging out. And then Leslie was also working tables at the time there with Julie, and it was that was the whole scene.
So to just provide some frames of reference here. So Broken Social Scene is one band, but then as an offshoot of Broken Social Scene, one of the initial founders of Broken Social Scene is also Feist. And Feist has gone on to have her own career. Yeah. She was back for this history.
Was she there?
Yeah. Everyone that was a part of the original band essentially came back and played in this. At one point, there's 17 people on stage. This is why this podcast is unscripted. Right now. Cool. This is it. Because you don't know where it's going to go. And my God, is it beautiful.
So I remember being on the rooftop looking
Yes.
at Toronto's skyline.
Thank you.
Brendan was there. Leslie was there.
Yeah.
And it was actually after that. So we had gone off to the UK. Leslie had gone off to Paris. She had written her incredible, breakthrough album.
Yeah.
And but at the time, Toronto was really different to look at the skyline than what it would be today. Like if you went up to that same spot at the rooftop of 77 Florence.
Yeah.
Actually, I would love to see a photograph of that. If any listener has that
live,
photograph, if you live at 77 Florence and you
go
get
to
up to the rooftop,
yeah, go to the rooftop,
take a picture, send it to me. I would love to see that.
You heard that, okay? If you're listening and you have access, go. All right.
Where we've come from and where we are, and where we're going, more importantly, in this city is a pretty exciting motivator.
All right. So
it's 2008. I'm back in Toronto.
You're growing the practice.
We're growing the practice. There's a call to action in the policy framework. Immigration is increasing in Toronto. The expectation of what the city can be. I think David Miller is or soon to be our mayor. Exciting projects around research projects that everybody is working on across the city. Was a real special moment. So I would say the period between 2009-10 up till, let's say, pre-COVID. Let's make that an era.
Yeah,
because
it's post-recession and it's like everybody go indoors.
Yeah,
and shut down.
Yeah,
but also boom.
It's a boom. It was a total boom. And over that period in the practice, I found the just the number of projects increasing, the scale of the projects increasing, the reach that the studio had access to. I found that our roles in the projects were starting to evolve. What had been just we'll comment on bricks and mortar. We slowly started commenting on adaptability and what programs make sense here,
right?
And giving some direction on some built form adjacent to this little old heritage building that you're keeping in place. And wait, can we pick up that building and move it? Like, we started to push the boundary on what could be done with the value we all kind of understood and shared without losing integrity, without taking away from that value. So it was an incredible period of maturity and building up of the practice, and some pretty wonderful projects over that period. And at the same time, we were professionally being involved and participating in projects. We were doubling down on our research and development, which as a business model, isn't
like, you're smiling as
isn't as lucrative.
I know where you're.
But we found ourselves just totally interested in investing back in our practice
because the return ultimately is going to come.
Eventually. I mean,
hopefully,
when we did Toronto the Good, we were just trying to throw a party and help our friends out. We didn't realize the long-term effect of that was expanding your network of audience exposure and connecting to other communities that were adjacent to architects and urbanists and what have you. We didn't realize we weren't putting that. It wasn't a master plan in any way. It was just a fun thing to chase down. So over that period, we were exploring. I mean, Graham had and was pursuing these tower renewal projects and other kind of urban growth and renewal assignments. Scott was starting to evolve his hand in residential architecture and really refining his kind of handle on luxury and stable residential communities up in Rosedale and eventually cottage country and Point of Barrel. Andrew was taking on incredibly complex conservation feats, I'll call them, everyone was just driving towards what else is this practice about. I had been getting distracted by a couple of other initiatives. One where we would it was called Culture of Outports, and we were taking students from any of the universities. We worked with Dalhousie, we worked with Ryerson, now TMU at the time, and we would take students for 2 weeks into an outport community. They would live with these people, eat with these people, design, and then build, all within a 2-week span, some kind of community need or gap. And it was about an exchange. It was about, how might you rethink and, the economy, the local cultural economy within that community. And that was something that was so inspiring to all of us. So we did a bunch of these community builds. We then took that and started trying to understand it across the country in various small communities across the country, which eventually became Culture of Small. And these all led to like projects.
The Culture of Small was what?
Culture of Small was trying to understand, so much of our country was settled, by natural resources. So what happens after the natural resource based economy is no more?
Yeah.
What do you do with these communities? Some of them you close shop, you shut them down. Some of them can be adapted and reused. So adapting and reusing on a community scale, and then working with businesses. We found ourselves working with small entrepreneurs and small businesses. How might you reposition your business strategies? So you'd be designing buildings for them, but you'd realize, you know what, you don't need to put money into this building. Let's just use it as is. Let's make the investment in, tweaking the business model, and we'll connect with these guys over here. We'll change the business model as a kind of Airbnb, and you sort of explore what opportunities the town might offer to attract new visitors, or residents, or what have you. So it was a fun period, and kind of dialogue, and still running today through much of our hospitality, food and beverage work that we do across small communities outside of the city. And there's some great, wonderful things happening out in Prince Edward County still. With obviously the Drake is out there, but a whole slew of new entrepreneurs have sort of popped up, and we've had the privilege of working with so many of them. And north of the city in Caledon farmstead land, there's so many great new businesses popping up there as well. A shout out to Good Lot Brewery, a shout out to Cambium Farms, some really great venues, place-based businesses that are responding to the values of the community they live in, and homegrown stuff. So that was very special and wonderful for us. So again, so much of the work we were doing at ERA in that period was, growing the business, and at the same time reinvesting in research and development. And I remember one of the pitches at the time when we were growing staff, and I was quite involved with hiring staff at the time. And I remember looking for people who were doing stuff outside of architecture. So whatever you were doing outside of the office, after hours, that was really interesting to us. We want to understand how that might fold into the business, and how we might leverage that. How is this going to motivate you? What platform does this provide to you that you can? It's
going to add value to what you can do here.
Exactly.
That go beyond what we currently can do.
Everybody wins in that. In that scenario.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So tell me, how did you get to the point where you understood that you needed to expand beyond Toronto?
It was Toronto was where, again, as a place we were living, we were practicing, we were understanding the city, we were mapping it, we were trying to understand what the patterns were, what would be next. We were sort of informing the developers and the development community in a kind of oblivious way at sometimes, but in pursuit of growing a culture and supporting that culture. And eventually that's just going to take you into other settings. Eventually that's going to take you into to other places. So in and around that same time, one of our other associates, Jan Kubanek, was finding himself being pulled back to Montreal, where he was from.
Okay. And
so rather than part ways, we said, well, why don't you just keep working at ERA, and you can explore opportunities in Montreal. So, it was, again, not by design, but just simply out of either accommodation. And we just, hey man, we want you to Just stay
Yeah, we don't lose
connected.
you.
We don't
Yeah,
lose you.
yeah.
What do you mean leave?
Can't leave us.
That's not happening. So I would say, in welcoming the number of, great individuals that we've seen, contribute to ERA over the years, we had so many people that were from different places. Victoria Angel had been with us in the Toronto office for some time, and again felt the pull to go back to Ottawa. So we found ourselves having an Ottawa practice. We had some individuals who decided to move out to Prince Edward County. We opened up a branch office out there. As much as we were feeling a pull to the East Coast, we felt like out of province felt a little trickier for us. We understood, we could deal with Ontario. Quebec, Montreal wasn't too far away. Out of province, either to the east or to the west, was something that just wasn't in the cards until I would say 2017 or 18, when a few of our staff decided they felt the pull back to Calgary or the pull back to Vancouver. So we and then COVID hits and everybody goes back to their homes, the cities and places that they had lived. So
Yeah.
we kind of had a bit of a head start in understanding how we might operate as a national company, and we were accepting and we would take on opportunities as they popped up as kind of pop-up assignments. We had done some work up in the Yukon in Dawson City, Canada's best kept secret. Shout out to Dawson.
I've heard.
It's just absolutely
I cannot wait to get there.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And we had been involved with some dabbling of projects across the country, again doing temporary licenses, but then eventually setting up shop and doing it in a more kind of formal way. So we have a few studios across the country and licenses to practice in most of the provinces. And again, our entry point is often still with heritage buildings and adaptive reuse, but again, it's always a value-based proposition. What do you do with value? So that conversation gets you into all kinds of really interesting kinds of projects. So yeah,
I love it. Phil, tell me about outside of practice, and because you as you describe it, the practice is no longer just a small thing. So you're now what would you guesstimate average of how many?
I would say we're around 100, 120 people.
Like it's
a fair size
since compared to when you started.
Yeah. It's grown for sure. And you sometimes
do you want to step away from that and think about it? I don't know.
No, you sometimes just realize like, oh, that's a lot of people,
yeah.
And that's a lot of projects.
Yeah.
Like that's hundreds and hundreds of projects.
Yeah.
But what I'll say, like the resources that are available to you, the incredibly smart people, and the range of discussions and contributions and the network that you access is beyond your imagination. So it's always a lesson in how to manage your business as a business owner. You're constantly thinking about what next.
Yes.
And so that's sometimes you find yourself very deep into your business. At times you had to be across your business. Many times you had to look outside of your context, especially I would say over the last few years. The challenge is not just today, but over the last 5 or 6 years that we've all experienced, and that's been across industries. Like that's the comforting aspect of it. It's not just in our building industry that we've seen the ups and the downs. It's across this country in all sectors, and the challenges are important to take stock on and understand. What are the needs of our clients? What are the challenges they're hoping to overcome?
Yeah.
many of our initiatives today are trying to address problems outside of architecture. I was mentioning before, we've got a research program around our Great Lake Basin. Like just
this is, sorry, you say before. I should preface, this is before recording.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was shocking to me to take stock on just how many people live in the Great Lakes, off the Great Lakes, and use the Great Lakes as their address. And there's been some incredible work out of U of T around just the idea of a third coast. Mason White had put out a publication years ago, inspirational. If anybody wants to check that out, it's just a beautiful publication of our Great Lakes. And but how does that get managed?
Right.
30 million people, how many trillions of dollars in that economy? Forget about the borders for a second. We all share this natural resource. So how communities continue to grow, how we do that respectfully, responsibly, how we deal with flooding, how we connect our various different conservation authorities together. We may be planning for growth, and that's been our focus for the last 25 years or so. I think our focus might shift over the next 5 to 20 years, and
right.
that what we're planning for is still probably up in the air. It might be planning for stewardship, planning for belonging, planning for what it is to sustain an affordable lifestyle of sorts. Those are all very accessible questions to many people, and that's a shared experience with many other cities that are part of this Great Lake Basin. So as a research project, we've just been collecting data.
I love it.
On that, and hope to build that knowledge base up. So again, as the business evolves, as you look at the different headwinds of factors, globally and kind of on the micro scale.
Yeah.
Everything with from AI to global forces around the world. This is an absolute wild moment to take stock on how to manage step by step and keep our wits about ourselves, the challenges that we have as a culture and as a society. And I think that's a call to action we all have to, but we've been here before. We've had housing crisis before. In the turn of the last century, there's a woman in our office who did a ton of research on walk-up apartment buildings and discovered that during the last housing crisis, pre-war, apartment buildings were an emerging typology in this city. And you know what? We forgot about that.
Yeah.
That typology.
Focused on condos instead.
We focused on all sorts of other things. Yeah. And coming back to lessons learned of the city and the kind of these forgotten, historic building types. Let's understand how they, might provide opportunity to us, moving forward. So I would say never has there been a more important moment to use those observation skills and
the knowledge that we've gained,
grow that knowledge,
and that now we can start banking. Yeah,
absolutely. So. I would say being in the business, across the business, and outside of it is really, really important. And as we evolve as practitioners and our roles of what architects can be and what we can do and who we can talk to, I've always been frustrated by aspects of our profession, and I'm not alone in that. But much of what we do as architects has already been predetermined by the time we get to certain stages of concept thinking and trying to address challenges for our clients. And in many ways, maybe as architects, we should have been more involved with some of the policy thinking that's been evolving over the years, and we see it more and more now.
I think people are
stepping into it, and they have to, right?
Yeah.
It took me a while to wake up to that too, but it's we're all very much connected, and we have some pretty big challenges to solve for.
I agree. I want to ask you before we come to an end here. I want to ask you a little bit about you and what do you like to do outside of office, and what keeps you busy? What does family look like? What are some of your interests and hobbies? if you can get a little bit into that, I'm gonna give you like a couple minutes to just go ahead and share what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Hobbies. I rarely fill out that section of
now's your
CV.
chance.
Now's the chance.
I know you like to collect stamps.
I do like to collect stamps. Did I tell you that?
No, do you actually?
Yeah, I do. How did you pull that out?
Come on. Are you being serious?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I have a very rare stamp collection.
Actually. I had no idea.
Yeah. It's funny you pull that out.
Synergies of the moment, man.
Yeah, actually that was my introduction to the global world was collecting stamps back in the day.
I love it. I love it.
I'm probably not as active in the stamp collection.
That's okay.
World anymore. But listen, I like understanding what's going on in other people's businesses.
Okay.
And I find that absolutely invigorating to see what others are up to. So I still like to go to lots of events and meet new people. Yep. I still work on old cars, fix them up and sell them on a regular basis.
No way.
Yeah, and it's the connection I have with restoration.
Yeah.
Is keeping old vehicles on the road and wasting too much money and time.
What have been some of the fun cars that you've restored?
I just finished up a 93 Land Rover Range Rover Classic 2-door that came out of Spain. So I just finished that.
And sold it?
I'm probably going to put it up for sale soon.
Crazy.
Reluctantly. But I've got other projects that we just picked up a little 1989 VW Cabriolet.
Oh, I know that car.
Oh man, they're so fun. Like if you can get them at a bargain basement price, you're golden.
Okay.
I mean, not many people have the space, the time, and honestly, nobody knows how to drive stick anymore. So it's just like you're picking up these things left next to nothing, right?
My current car, and I mean, I guess I was going to say the car that I have now is the first time, but it's not. I realized it's the second car. I've been driving manual my entire life, and I only recently switched to auto only because I couldn't get a bike rack on the previous car that I had. And I knew I'd have to borrow my wife's, and my wife doesn't know how to drive manual, so I had to go auto because of a bike rack. Yeah, I know that's pathetic, but like, yeah, I have a motorcycle right next door to us.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to check that out.
At least I get to ride manual there. Anyhow, go ahead.
No, it's
what else? What other hobbies? What other hobbies are you into?
Well, I'm a father of 2 teenage boys right now.
There you go.
And I'll say it's that is a daily lesson on its own. And I realize, when the kids were young, my role was really quite specific, and my contributions and playing with the kids and doing all that stuff. But I didn't feel, and my role was very different to 6-year-olds than it was to a 14-year-old or an 18-year-old,
of course.
And like what it is for young people to turn into adults is absolutely wild. You realize, oh gosh, I haven't matured beyond the age of 17.
There is
and I relate to this 17-year-old, in a way that is just like, oh, I haven't really matured much beyond this. It feels at times, I'll admit to everybody, but it is really a wonderful thing to. It's one thing to learn it for the first time. It's another to sort of pass the experience along to someone else.
And watch them go through it. Yeah.
Watch them try, watch them fail, being okay letting them fail at it. Showing them how to deal with that failure. And actually there's that's part of the process. And actually I'll just a throwback to, I think, my second day on the job on a project with Edwin, one of the former partners, and I'll admit this we were inspecting the former City TV building at 299 Queen.
Yep.
And we were up there on a swing stage.
Shout out to Moses Snimer.
Yeah, shout out. Inspecting all the little terracotta blocks to see have any cracked, are they compromised, what have you. And as we're coming down the swing stage, and there's a little lip there on the upper level there over the second floor that you have to sort of the operator for the swing stage, look, just push off the wall so we don't knock the cornice level there, and keep it away, and we'll bring the swing stage over top, and I'll lower it down very gently, very carefully. And as we were coming down over that little lip there, I didn't pull my leg in fast enough, and I broke the speaker's corner sign, the little neon thing, and I felt so awful. I felt so bad, and the operator there, could just tell how devastated I was that I did some damage. Sorry, I think others own that building now. I apologize, but he said to me, if you're not making mistakes in life, you're really not doing much, which is a sort of takeoff something I think Albert Einstein had said. And being comfortable enough with making mistakes and dealing with failure, it was something I learned to just get over. Get over the fear of failure. And I would say that to a young person has huge impact, right?
Yeah, my children really struggle with not doing things perfectly, like monumental breakdown sometime because it's not done the way they were hoping it would be done. I'm like, it's okay, don't worry.
Could you imagine having that fear and letting that be a barrier to stop you from taking a chance, from designing or conceptualizing something, and that you wouldn't have that feeling of seeing it built or seeing it constructed, or
again, all of this goes back to why I wanted to, why I like doing this, is because you talk through all of the errors and mistakes and everything you've done over the course of your career and what it can look like. And it's not about the awards, and it's not about someone else telling your story and defining it. It's an opportunity for you to be able to recognize all the things that you've had to go through to get to where you are. And the beauty associated with that it's not a linear path.
Yeah, it's pretty true, and it's pretty. We're all pretty lucky to do this for a living.
I want to ask you one last thing, and that is, like, I assume that there's someone that you've referenced only once or twice here, but that's probably emboldened you to be able to go out and pursue a lot of your career.
Is that my wife?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I got it right. She's a pretty special person, and an incredible individual, and a partner. And I think you really luck out in life to find individuals to support you, encourage you, and have your back. And I think I'm beyond lucky for that, and to have the comfort and to have a partner is somebody to throw ideas off of and take chances with, and whether they agree with you or not, like they okay, well, whatever happens. So no, I've benefited from her experiences and her the chances that she's taken, and I've been a big supporter at times in my life for those periods. And she's done the same for me. So it's a lesson in, I would say that's probably a value we share with each other. There's a Yoko Ono piece of artwork that I think is we both value so much. And it was actually a piece that, I forget the story. Somebody, you can check it out, but whatever. It's a ladder in a museum, and it goes up to the ceiling, and at the top of the ladder there's a little magnifying glass, and you hold it up to the ceiling. There's a little piece of paper, and on that piece of paper it's the simple word yes. And that, I think, is something that both Julie and I believe in as a vision and driver for everything we both have taken on. And that can be absolutely terrifying, and it can be absolutely comforting, and at stages and phases of your lives, of your relationship and your family, it's been a solid touch point for both of us.
Phil, it has been fucking awesome having you here, man. And now I have to turn on the explicit rating for the for this recording.
We both have to get it.
Honestly, man, it has been such an absolute fucking joy having you on here and having you share the story. I've loved this, man.
Thank you,
It's been great.
Jonathan. This was really fun.
Better than you thought it would
Appreciate
be, right? The nerves, they dissipated.
They do. You were right. A camera and a microphone can be pretty intimidating.
There's no camera.
Yeah, no,
right. That's the beauty of this. For anyone else listening right now, worth noting, to take in some of the work that ERA does, you can head over to Instagram. You can go to my account. You can go to the ERA account. You'll be able to see the work. You can go to the website. Link is in the liner notes. Also, I would kindly ask that if you are listening to this and you're in a studio and there's more than one of you, if you wouldn't mind just as like a group going and giving this show a rating, it will really help. Like 5 stars really helps with the exposure. So go ahead and do that. Make that a group effort. I appreciate that. And then the last thing is, if you would agree that Phil's awesome, I mean, you could write a comment also in the liner note and it's on Spotify or on YouTube. So, dude, thank you for doing this, and for you listening, thank you for listening. It's been so much fun today.
Thank you, John.